Hi Vintage Bakers! Today I'm in the kitchen making an easy, garden-fresh rhubarb cake. This easy old-fashioned recipe makes a sweet moist cake that's a must in every vintage baker's repertoire. This cake is the perfect balance of tart rhubarb and soft sweetness. The crisp oatmeal crumble topping covers the pillowy light cake, which makes this a recipe you'll look forward to making every year. The tart stalks are perfect in desserts for a delicious sweet-sour pairing. Let's get into the kitchen. This is how I make a deliciously simple rhubarb cake. In a medium bowl, I'm going to mix my dry ingredients. 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 3/4 cup of whole wheat flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. My grandmother's original recipe called for allspice, so feel free to swap this out for the cinnamon. I'm just going to give this a little swish to let all the dry ingredients mix and mingle together. Set this aside and I'm going to grab a large bowl. Add in 1/2 cup of softened butter, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and 1/4 cup of white sugar. I'm going to cream the butter and sugars together until light and fluffy. I'm using my stand mixer with the paddle attachment for this, but you can just as easily do this with beaters. Add in 1 egg and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Beat this into the mixture. I'm making sure to stop and scrape down the sides and bottom of the bowl to make sure everything is getting mixed in evenly. Now to this light and creamy mixture, I'm going to alternate mixing in buttermilk and the dry ingredients I prepared earlier. I'm just going to add in half of the buttermilk at a time, which is about 1/2 cup. Mix this and then mix in half of the dry ingredients. Mix in the last 1/2 cup of buttermilk and then finally mix in the rest of the dry ingredients. If you don't have any buttermilk on hand, just mix in a tablespoon of vinegar or lemon juice to some regular milk and set it aside for about 5 minutes to sour. And now for the star of this recipe, I'm going to prepare the rhubarb. Rhubarb is one of the earliest crops you can get from your spring garden. I've already washed and removed the leaves since this part of the plant is poisonous. I'm using a food processor to quickly cut my rhubarb into a thin slice. The thin slices of rhubarb almost melt into the cake, infusing it with flavor. If you prefer thicker slices of rhubarb, then skip the food processor and do this step by hand. I'm going to gently fold the brightly colored rhubarb slices into this light, foamy batter. I'm going to tip the whole thing out into my greased rectangular casserole dish. You can also use a cake pan for this if you want a slightly fancier rhubarb cake, but I prefer this rustic old-fashioned look for mine. Now I can move on to mixing my crisp oatmeal crumble topping. This is my favorite topping for this cake, but if you want a more decadent version, swap it out for cream cheese icing. In a bowl, I'm going to mix together 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of quick oats, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. I've already cut 1/4 cup of cold butter into little cubes, and I'm going to add this to the spiced sugar mixture. To incorporate the butter and make everything nice and crumbly, you can either use a pastry blender or you can rub the butter through your fingertips. I'm going to sprinkle this flavorful little crumble evenly over top of the batter so it can form that light crispy crust on top of the cake in the oven. Bake in a preheated 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius oven for 40 to 45 minutes, or until it's golden and a skewer inserted in the center comes out clean. And now I'm ready to slice and serve. This cake is perfect just as it is, or with a generous scoop of ice cream to soften and melt into all those pillowy spaces inside the cake. If you're a fan of deliciously simple vintage recipes and old-fashioned skills, then you'll want to check out this next video. Thanks for stopping by. Enjoy!